You must stay at home. Stay at home.
Hello and welcome to Lockdown, hosted by Steve Bomford with Mike Davis-Marks. Our armed forces operate in challenging environments. Week by week, we'll explore what we can learn from their experiences.
Hi Steve, I understand your next interviewee for the podcast is someone I know actually pretty well, Lieutenant Commander Pete Reed, MBE.
MBE and an Olympic gold medalist several times over. What a remarkable chap.
Yeah, I know his story quite well. I think the listeners are going to be fascinated by this. I really do.
Yeah, it doesn't pan out quite the way you expect in some ways, does it? But yeah, a remarkable guy, and let's have a listen to what he's got to say. So Pete, thank you for joining us on the podcast. I have to admit I've got a bit of inside knowledge here in my first question, because Mike has told me that this is an interesting story. So do you mind telling me, how did you discover rowing?
I don't mind. So hi, Steve. Nice to see you. Nice to chat, and it's really good to be on. So thanks for that warm invitation, and a really nice starter as well. I found rowing almost by chance and very late on, and it's a story I tell to lots of schools, particularly as I was never very good at sport at school, to say the least. My PE teacher once described me as an unremarkable pupil at a parents' evening to my mum. It's true, I wasn't very good at rugby or football or basketball. I tried hard, but I never really found my thing. And it wasn't until I joined the Navy when I was 18 and then went to sea for the first time. And I was onboard HMS Exeter in the Gulf back in 2000. And the club swinger on board, the ship's PTI, physical training instructor, sat me down on a rowing machine, and he was gathering up all of the young guys and girls to have a 1,000-meter blast on the rowing machine because there was a fleet-wide fitness test. And so just sat me down. It's 50 degrees on the upper deck, and I remember him just telling me to go as hard as I possibly could. So I did, and Julie did what I was told, and I remember the numbers, and I remember how I felt after. I felt sick and heat exhausted and went back down to 3 papa mess. But later on, the commanding officer bothered to come and find me to say that was a really good time. And it was the fastest time in the fleet that year. If anyone wants to have a go on an ergo rowing machine, then it was 3 minutes and 5 seconds. And even looking back now, it's a pretty good time for my first ever effort on a rowing machine. And the advice from the commanding officer was, when you go to university next year, then take up rowing. And that's how it all started. So I joined the Navy before I found rowing. I duly took it up at university, and I was good at sport for the first time. I found my thing. I liked being up early. I liked being with a like-minded bunch of people, getting out and getting some exercise. And I got lucky, same as so many. I got lucky with the people I rowed with. My coach, Fred Smallbone, just my transition into being in better and better boats. And it sounds funny, but I was always the worst in the boat. I was always technically the weakest and the least experienced person in the boat. And as soon as that changed, as soon as I made good progress, I just went to the next higher boat. And before I knew it, I was in the senior team for Great Britain. And then within a few years, in fact, within 4 years, we'd won a senior world championship gold medal, and then it took off after that.
So I'm going to have to ask this PE teacher: have you spoken to them since?
Yeah, so if Paul Christensen, if Mr. Christensen is listening, no harm done, sir. No harm done. No, I haven't seen him since, but.
So can we track him down? Can we track him down on the podcast and see what he has to say?
I'm sure he's a good man, and no hard feelings. You know, he didn't say anything that wasn't true. I wasn't great at sports. I was pretty unremarkable on the sports pitch. Always offside in rugby, always missing shots in basketball. But I did try hard, and that's, I think, working hard and being prepared to come back and being welcoming the failures and coming back is a hallmark of a good rower. You know, you've got to be determined. And I've rowed with so many champions now and so many great athletes, and they're all very different. They've got different physical and mental and technical attributes. But the one thing that defines a good rower is that they're determined. And I think that's probably what I harnessed through being bad at sports at school, is coming back for some more punishment.
So key learning here, if anybody's got a bad report from school, it's not over.
No, it's certainly not over. And the more people I meet in this journey of life, the more stories I hear about how hardship comes first, and that was a bit of hardship. Great things are born from hardship, and maybe that's a nice lead into what we're all going through at the moment. This is a particularly hard time. I don't want to date the podcast, but we've just had a January of 2021, which I don't think many people are going to forget. It's a grueling time, no matter what's going on in life. So there's a lot to be learned from there, and a lot of opportunity as well, I think. We don't learn much from the easy times when we're cruising, when we're easily winning. No one learns from those times. And good man once said to me, "Nothing worthwhile is ever easy," and it's so true. If it's easy, what's the point?
Absolutely. So, what does it take to become a triple Olympic gold medal winner? Because I asked this question because I was thinking about asking this question without sounding like it's such a dull question, but as someone who's not an athlete at all, you sort of see Olympics and you see sporting events, and you essentially, I think what you see is a race of some description or a sporting event or something, and then a medal ceremony, and that is almost the extent of the crowd, the viewers' involvement, and clearly there's a lot more work that goes on behind the scenes.
It takes years and years of dedication and determination and sacrifice, and it takes a very resilient. It takes a resilient team. I know it's a person, but rowing's a team sport, and even if you're in an individual sport, whatever you do, there's always a team involved. It's never just one person picking up a trophy. There's a massive pyramid underneath. But it takes a lot of resilience, and I know I mentioned it I have already, but the sacrifice thing. What are you prepared to give up that no one else is prepared to give up? And that sounds a really boring answer, but doing anything to that level, it takes so much discipline, determination, and sacrifice, and a willingness to fail, and being prepared to fail, so that when it does happen, you take it well, you learn from it, you grow from it, you come back, you dust yourself off and pick up the rowing oar again, and off you go. Because I realized this when I was going through my latest chapter, is I think the reason why I'm handling myself quite well is because when I fail, I regularly do, especially now. I mean, everything is an opportunity to learn. Everything is a failure. I'm so used to failing every single day. There was never a stroke that was good enough. There was never a number that was big enough. There was never a weight that was heavy enough. You're always sizing someone else in the world, or someone else next to you in your team. You're never good enough. And in every debrief, there's always a way to improve. So that's what it takes. Years and years of resilience and dedication and sacrifice. And if you're prepared to go to bed at 8:30 to be asleep for 9 o'clock every night, so that you can wake up feeling fresh and fresher than the next guy, then you're going to get in the boat, and they're not. And it's easy for a day, and it's easy for a week, and it's pretty hard for a month, but you can do it. It's almost impossible for a year, and then 4 years, and 8 years, and 16 years. It's it adds up. So, what are you prepared to do? How much do you want it? That's what it takes.
Wow. That's a level of commitment I don't possess, I can assure you. So resilience, I have to admit, this is another word that Mike pointed out to me, that's something you would be able to talk about. And I think obviously is going to be quite important when we come on to talk about where you're at today. What do you mean by resilience in the context of sport?
In the context of sport, I think being able to bend but not break. So you're going to get knocked by a whole number of things every day, and how much can you withstand and then come back to be your best? And very early on your journey. I mean, if and I think about this quite a lot. At the moment, we're living at a time, COVID notwithstanding, technology and life has become quite easy in some respects. So you can pick up your phone and you can go to an app and search for a movie and watch it immediately and stream it over the fastest broadband. And you can, if you want a pizza, you can say what you want, and you're annoyed if it takes 30 minutes. You know, it really should be at my door in 15 minutes. Everything is immediate, and immediate gratification. We all know about that, but that trains you in the wrong direction. That trains you that, you know, things should be here now, exactly as I want, cheap, and unfortunately, life's not like that. Life is the opposite. I mean, it's very, very tough. You'll get these moments of happiness and these moments of progress, but they've got to be balanced out with moments of hardship and moments of sadness and moments of trauma. And I think resilience for me it's something developed over time. I know that I'm resilient, but I didn't start off that way. You just get slowly chipped away at, and yeah, I can weather the rain. That's all right. The rain that life's throwing at me, and okay, now it's hailing. Oh, okay, now I'm in a thunderstorm. This is tough. I need to take shelter. Okay, and as you go through life, you'll get knocked and hit and hurt more and more and more. And how much can you take and then come back and smile through it? And then when the storm disappears and when the rain clouds disappear, you're still there and you're still strong. And I think your ability to weather those storms in life is what resilience is. And the key thing is it's trainable as well. It's trainable just like anything else. You do a little bit, you suffer, you rest, you come back stronger, you learn, you grow. The basics. And it's so simple, but it's so hard to do. And I think that's why we don't practice it as much as perhaps we should.
How interesting. So I think resilience is going to come up again in the next question here. But I'm really quite struck by what you said there as well about you just do not know what life is going to throw at you. You don't know what's around the corner, and you can't prepare for those things, can you?
No, you certainly can't. Yeah, but it could be a sideswipe. You really don't know. And the latest chapter I've been going on, I met some remarkable people, and none of them knew that this was going to happen, and to what extent. And none of them would have chosen it. But the way to prepare is, I think, working as hard as you can and resting as well as you can with whatever you've got right now. So you're a little bit stronger than yesterday. You're a little bit more tired as well. You rest, and tomorrow you're even stronger. And I don't dwell. That's a key thing. I really try not to dwell on the past. But if I look back, I've got the fondest of memories, and there's been some wonderful successes in the Olympics. There have been some epic failures as well. But when I look back, I'm really proud of what I did, because I feel like I didn't do everything, and I've never stood on top of Mount Everest, and there are lots of things that I missed out on, which are the things I regret. But if I look back at what I did do with what I had at the time, that's quite comforting. So I can almost let that chapter of my life go. The sports chapter, I don't look back and think, oh, why can't I be 25 again and standing on the podiums? Well, guess what? Life catches up with you. Age catches up with you. And then the latest of what's happened is it almost feels like it's just added 50 years to my life overnight. And, that's cruel, but we don't choose these things. We can choose how we handle it. And as long as I'm prepared to have a quick reassessment of what success is for me and what good looks like, as long as I'm prepared to do that, which mercifully I am, then we can move on in life, and actually I can find fulfillment elsewhere. It doesn't have to be in the middle of an Olympic podium anymore. Fascinating.
I think that's a really good answer. So if we talk about where we're at today, or where you're at today, so more recently things have taken an unexpected turn, and you suffered a spinal stroke, which I have to say I'd never heard of. I think most people's knowledge of a stroke would be something to do with the head. So first of all, what is a spinal stroke, and how in practical terms has that affected you?
don't feel guilty about not knowing what it was. So I went to an acute stroke ward in my first hospital, and there were consultants there who had never seen a spinal stroke. So they are rare. A stroke that we know of is a stroke in the brain, so an impingement of the blood flow to an area of the brain, which means that the cells in the brain aren't getting oxygen and they die or become dormant to an extent. And what a spinal stroke is the same process, but in your spinal cord. So there's an impingement of the blood flow, an impingement of oxygen getting to your spinal cord, and the spinal cord cells die. And your spinal cord is like a motorway of neural traffic that goes from your brains to the rest of your body to tell it what to do and how to move and all of those bits and pieces. And unfortunately, in my case, the blood stopped getting to my spinal cord. And now instead of having a motorway of millions and millions of neurons every second flying around your body, telling your muscles exactly how to behave and what sensory signals to send back to the brain, it's not a motorway anymore. It's more like an overgrown footpath. And my spinal cord is still in one piece. There's been no car accident or trauma from the outside, but inside there's no flow of that neural traffic. And it's happened at a level just below my chest. So it means that my core, and we're looking at each other now, my core from here down, so from just below my chest is, initially there was nothing. I mean, there's no core strength at all. There's no leg movement at all. And it's terrifying. It's terrifying what happens to you overnight. A great analogy that the nurses told me early on was that the bottom half of your body below your injury line learns a different language. It speaks a new language now. So I guess if it's a small stroke or a small trauma, then maybe it's speaking German, a fairly easy language to learn. But I think mine is speaking like Martian. I mean, I can learn it, but it's going to take an awfully long time. And it's a horrible feeling when you're lying in a hospital bed and you can't sit up. I couldn't lift my shoulders off the bed. And this realization of what's happening, it's shocking. And it's bad luck, and it's sad, unless it isn't. Unless it isn't, and that's just a decision that you make. And it's in your mind, and you can really make the best out of what seemingly looks like the worst of situations. And that's it. That's a mindset.
So the languages that you're talking about, that metaphor that you've used, or the nurse used for you, does this mean that you can learn this Martian language and help improve your condition, or is that the right way to think about it?
Yeah, I think it is. So I know that I'm never going to be standing on the middle of podiums again. I'm not going to be on arduous courses again. I'm not going to be jumping up and running around. So there's a finite window that you've got to learn these languages, and the rate of progress that you make is how much work you put into it, and the expertise you have around you, and the facilities that you've got are a big factor. But the biggest factor is the magnitude of the injury. So I'll do everything I can with the facilities that are available to me to increase that rate of progress. But after about 2 years, good medical understanding is that you stop making progress to the same extent. So you've got this 2-year window to make most progress. There have been cases where 5 years and 10 years on, small things have changed here and there in individual cases. But realistically, you've got 2 years to get back what you're going to get back. And I think as long as I and the team have put in all the work that's possible, then hopefully I'll be an old man one day and I can look myself in the mirror and know that we did everything we could. When it comes to learning the language again, there are some really exciting changes that have happened. But rehab isn't about being back to where you were. It's about having an independent, fulfilled transition back to the real world where you can contribute and help and have a purpose and have a life and get on with things. I'm looking forward to the time where my problems are the same as everyone's problems. Like just normal things, rather than how am I going to use the bathroom today? When early on, my problem was putting my own pair of pants on, or not fouling the bed, waking up and it being clean. Horrible new life transition things. And rehab is about how can you navigate back to a healthy, fulfilled life. And if there's a wheelchair involved in that, well, okay, fine. People have it worse. I think all the time, I'm so lucky. I'm so lucky to have had the help I've got. I'm lucky that I've got my arm strength. Genie's been incredible. Royal Navy have been incredible. There's all sorts of things going for me. And also just when I reflect back and how I appreciate life now, the peers that I trained with in rehab, just remarkable people. And even if I could go back in time and change this, I wouldn't want to give up the lessons I've learned and the people that I've met this last 18 months. I wouldn't do that. I'm desperate to walk again, and I don't think I'll ever fully accept what happened, but walking again and acceptance of it is in my future. It's not in my past, and it would be wrong of me to sit and stew and dwell and blame and curse. These are all forgivable and very understandable responses to any trauma that's happened to anybody, but it's not helpful. And I think as soon as you realize that and you can make your peace with it, then you can breathe it again, and then crucially make progress in the right direction. No one made progress through dwelling. That's a fast way to go the wrong way. So that's why I think I'm lucky, and my background in the military and my background in sport has helped considerably with coming to those realizations more quickly, because it's a very familiar route that I'm doing now, from hospital bed, being completely paralyzed, to growing and making the best of it, probably about 4 years later. That's exactly the same as turning up on day one of an Olympiad and being a terrible oarsman and athlete, and then working, chipping away every hour of every day and every sacrifice to being in the middle of the podium in 4 years' time.
So I saw a video, I think, on your Twitter feed, which was showing you walking in a pool. Is that right? So just what you just said about you're desperate to walk again, which I think we can all empathise with. How did that feel, that kind of walking in a pool? Because that's obviously walking. I know it's aided by the water and the buoyancy, but that must be quite a big step for you as well.
Yeah. I put a couple of walking videos up. So I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. So the videos are upright, and it's me supporting my weight, but everything is heavily assisted. So there's a buoyancy aspect to being in the pool. And maybe if I only weighed a kilo, then I might be able to walk again. But I'm 97 kilos, so it's a different matter. The walking in the pool, the reason that was a breakthrough is because although my legs are ever so weak and neural fatigue sets in after maybe 3 or 4 repetitions of any movement, suddenly they'll just grind to a halt. It's almost funny to watch. But my left leg has gone from absolutely nothing, not only lights out, but no light switch, and you can't even see where the light switch is. Just, I couldn't think of how to send a signal to my left leg, whereas my right leg has always been a little bit further ahead. I've just been able to think I could send a signal. So as the months have gone on and we've done more rehab, and then I look back and look to the walking in the pool video and think, both legs, they're moving there. I'm sending a signal, it's getting through. And rather than perhaps the overgrown footpath that I was dealt with back in September 2019, maybe now it's a bit more like a bridle way, like a nice clear bridle way, certainly on the right leg, and traffic can pass down there. On the left leg, it's I'm really abusing this metaphor now, but if I've got perhaps a bridle way down to my left leg, maybe I've got a person on a pair of roller skates trying to get down there, and it's just a bit slow and a bit arduous, and it's not quite right. Where my right leg, at least I've got someone on a horse on a bridleway that can get down. So, and I think as we do more work, that bridleway might get a bit smoothed out. The person on the roller skates might learn to take his skates off and put a pair of walking boots on, something that's a bit more suitable for the job, and hopefully we'll be able to do some walking that's a bit more coordinated. It's got a bit more strength in the legs. My glutes fire a little bit, which is what keeps my hips forwards. But the crucial thing is, and I'm sort of boring myself when I'm talking to this about you, but the crucial thing is I'm learning all the time about what my muscles can do, how they fire, what needs to happen, where my weaknesses are, what I need to work on, and mercifully I've been given the time to be able to do that with the people that can help me. So it's back to school, and the aim, I guess, is to get back everything I can. That's the only tricky thing for me. In my previous life, I knew what race day was. I knew what the standard was. I knew how to get to that standard. I pretty much knew who the opposition were going to be. I mean, they're all knowns, and it was something to work towards. And our aim, our ambition was to get an Olympic gold medal. I knew who my team was pretty much, and we sat down on day one of a 4-year project and said, yeah, gold, is this the aim? We knew the time, and we all agreed. This time, I don't quite know what the goal is. I don't know what the date is. I don't know how long we've got. There are a few unknowns, but what I do know is the process. As long as I'm doing the process and I'm on a curve, then it almost doesn't matter what the end state is. It's just the end state is what it is. The rate of progression is the goal, and I think I'm on that curve in a healthy way, and I can live with that.
Having some control of your own destiny, I suppose, because it would be quite easy to give up, I think. I don't think that's not your personality, I can tell, but I think a lot of people might think that. So
it would be easy to give up, and like I said before, that's forgivable as well. Especially when I was at the spinal unit in Salisbury, which was sort of chapter 2 of this rehab process. First chapter was in Derriford Hospital in acute care. And then I went to the spinal unit to get educated on what it means to have a spinal cord injury and how you look after yourself. And I saw a lot of patients there who had given up and were dwelling and blaming and stewing, and it's horrible to see. And I don't blame them either. It's not like they're weak characters or anything like that. It's just that the blow that they were dealt was a little bit beyond what they were able to cope with at that time. And the process that they have to go through is perhaps a little bit longer. Now, no doubt they'll come back, but it's very forgivable to give up. And I think if you have up until this point, don't give yourself a hard time. Don't beat yourself up. Just give yourself a bit of kindness, because if you feel like you've given up, it's not over. It's not over, and there's a way to come back. And I think, just to use your words there, I've taken back control of the things that I can control, and letting go of the things that you can't control is key. Just if you can't control it, let it go, and don't dwell and don't stew. And if you can do something to make your life a little bit better, then do it. Even though there's a risk of failing, do it. And if you fail, okay, no one likes it, but you can learn from it, hopefully laugh about it. Know that it's a great story for later on when you're doing a podcast and telling everybody about your failed bowel routines. I'm sorry. They're the best stories. They're the best stories for later on. Are the toilet mishaps and the shower mishaps, and that's the way out, to see the funny side and control what you
Absolutely. Can. So I think I don't know if there's anything you want to add, but I just wanted to know how you felt your training as an athlete has helped you with this unexpected challenge. I mean, you've obviously talked about resilience a lot, and that is really coming through very strongly with the way you're talking at the moment. But I was just wondering if there are any other sort of experiences you had as an athlete that you're drawing on that you haven't discussed.
Well, critically, not everybody's sporty, and not everybody can relate to sport. It might not be their thing, and that's okay too. So, rather than talk about my time as an athlete, I don't mind saying I was I was really good at this thing. And the same as all of my teammates were, we were all just so good at delivering a perfect rowing stroke to make a perfect race for a certain 6 minutes once every 4 years. And we all had our individual strengths and weaknesses to bring to those projects. Now, if you're the best in the world at anything, then it's the perfect analogy for life. If you're going to be that good at anything, then it just takes years of hard work and determination and not giving up. And if you want to get better at anything, then just do that thing. Just practice. Whether it's, and I think a lot at the moment, I think about parents at home who are homeschooling. I think about the public servants on the front line of nursing and medical care in the NHS. Thinking about school, the teachers and the kids going to school. There's just so much hardship going on at the moment, and people are right at the end of their tethers. They're dealing with more than they ever thought they possibly could. Just keep going. Take a deep breath. The stress is enormous. Try and find ways to recover, and whether it's making it through the day, whether it's finding the next meal for feeding kids, whether it's learning maths, whether it's preparing for GCSEs that might not happen, and all of these uncertainties in life at the moment, I just urge people to keep practicing and then keep recovering. An amazing lady called Tori James once came to speak to us when we were athletes. She was a mountaineer, so she'd summited Everest when she was very young. And she talked about the comfort zone and the stretch zone and the panic zone. And she talked about the comfort zone being where you need to be to recharge. The comfort zone shouldn't be the aim in life. The comfort zone gets very small if we were just seeking out comfort and we just want to be under our duvets in our warm beds. That's not the place that you want to be. That's not living, and the comfort zone gets very small. That's a great place to be if you're recharging from hardship. And because of all the hardship we're going through at the moment and all the stress, find out where you recharge and then get back into the fight and get a bit better the next day. And I think what's particularly hard at the moment is everybody's going through it. So normally if you're going through a chapter of hardship in your life, you've got friends or family or people that you can turn to who are doing well, that can pick you up. But right now the challenge is we're all feeling it. But the flip side of that coin is everyone's in it together. So keep talking to your friends and family, reach out, know that there's solidarity in hardship, that we're all feeling it, and never give up. Never give up. That was the key lesson my coach used to say to me, Jürgen Grobler, never give up. And I think of that every day. And I think of it as a message for the kids at school, for the workers on the front line, for teachers, for parents. Through all this hardship, never give up, because there's something to work towards.
So we're all going through one massive, great big life-changing event, aren't we? And I think
yeah,
just picking up the mood of what you're saying there, if people just picked up the phone and talked to a friend or a family member, could make such a huge difference in a situation where isolation and separation are presenting some pretty serious challenges for day-to-day living, to put it mildly. You're also, as you said, in the Royal Navy. What's the future of the Royal Navy hold for you? Have you got any plans? Do you know what that looks like at the moment?
Yeah, I'm so close to being able to talk about it. It's a astonishingly exciting time, and part of me wishes we were speaking about this next week, because we might know an awful lot more. But there are some really key facts that I haven't spoken about publicly yet that I'm really excited about. So I'll share those with you now. When you're injured, when you're in the forces and you're injured, you go into a rehab program. So you're medically downgraded from work until that you're well enough to be medically upgraded back into work, or medically discharged because you're not able to be employed, and because we're a fighting force. And back in December, an astonishingly exciting piece of news was at a medical board. I put in a personal statement and said that my intentions were to rehab until I'm well enough to come back to the full trained strength. And that's never been done for my level of injury before. but the doctors recommended that I'm retained in service. And there are some limitations. You know, I won't be going on a submarine again, and all very, very sensible limitations. But it was astonishingly exciting news and a real motivation for me, and I think great for the Royal Navy as well. It sends a very, very exciting and positive message about how creative this fighting force is. And then very recently, the employment board agreed with that recommendation to retain me in service. So now I am employable and waiting for an assignment order for a job, and it's a very, very exciting time to bring me back into the fold, to hopefully bring something from my background, from where I've worked in elite sports, and back into the fleet in a time of huge transformation and a huge delivery on that transformation. I think it's a very, very exciting time, and I can't say more than that because it's not.
That's okay.
Not absolutely confirmed yet, but it's. I'm very, very proud. You know, I'm proud to be in the Navy, and I've always been proud to serve. And when I was first injured, one of my first thoughts was that's the end of my career, and the end of my career before I was really able to get stuck into the career I signed up to before I started rowing. I really wanted to serve, and what's most exciting is that journey's not over, and I still have something that I can bring back and contribute, and it could be a career. You know, if I could be a very visual beacon of how the Navy are changing, to be perhaps in a wheelchair, perhaps not, but in uniform, and delivering again is very, very exciting, and not just for me.
Excellent. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you very much.
You're also an ambassador, or were an ambassador, for the RNRMC, is that right?
Well, that was way before my injury, but I still am now. So I think the time's coming where my capacity is starting to increase again, which feels fantastic. Actually, it means I'm starting to get on top of the rest of the aspects of life that take so much planning and preparation. But I love the RNRMC. An important charity anyway. A charity that look after sailors and Marines and their families when they fall on hard times, and they do some remarkable work. It's so important, especially now for all the reasons we've discussed already. And now I'm living with their support, and I'll continue to support them publicly as an ambassador as well. And that capacity of mine, I mean, suddenly I've lived through it. The story and the messages that I've got are absolutely frontline from a beneficiary. We've fallen on hard times, and the RNRMC was there for us. So yes, I'm an ambassador, and no, that'll never change.
Excellent. Well, I think you're going to have to come back on this podcast, because I think our listeners, and certainly I, will want to know how you're progressing with all of this. I don't know when that'll be, but maybe in a year's time. We've got another 20-odd episodes that we're doing for the RNRMC. So firstly, I would like to invite you back onto the podcast, and hopefully you'll say yes. But also, secondly, I'd like to say thank you very much. It's been an absolutely fascinating story, and I wish you the best of luck in all your endeavours. I've learnt a lot.
Thank you so much, Steve. It's really nice to be on, and it's always nice to be invited back as well. So I'll accept, and we'll chat in a year, and hopefully we've got some amazing stories to share.
I'm sure you will have. Thank you very much.
Cheers, Steve. All the best.
Mike, what a fascinating bloke. What a great pal of yours he is too. What did you make of that?
My jaw is still on the ground on this one, Steve. Tell me, when was the last time you interviewed a triple Olympic gold medalist?
Well, you know, it's like every other week.
I mean, I think what a story. I mean, I openly, admit that I knew him before he won his first gold medal. When I was working in the Navy, and he presented himself as someone that was, into rowing and going, for his first gold. This is pre-Beijing in 2008. And I said, well, we'll support you and give you some RN merchandise so that you can talk about it, and let's see how you get on. Well, what a story. The first Olympic gold medal in Beijing. The Navy then said, what a great ambassador for us. Let's keep him on. Second gold medal in London. That brought tears to the eyes, that one, because it's on home soil. And very few people have done this, win 3 Olympic gold medals in a row in consecutive Olympics in an endurance sport. And he won again in Rio. And only Matthew Pinsett and Steve Rickrove have done better in rowing in the UK. Fantastic.
Absolutely. And I was really struck by the motivation to get up and do stuff. And you do for a month or, a week, a month. That's fairly easily. And then he went 4 years, 8 years, 12 years, 16 years. I thought that's just beyond my comprehension. I mean, that level of dedication, remarkable.
Well, we'll come on to dedication when we talk about some of the things that happened to him later. But it just takes your breath away, when you think that at school he was declared by his PE teacher as unremarkable, not very good at sport. In his own words, I didn't really do sport. And it wasn't until he joined the Navy and happened to be coerced, I think that was the word, onto a rowing machine. I think they were rowing down the Suez Canal when this happened. And then just by chance happened to set the fleet record for the year without really knowing that any other technique than just row as hard as you can. And his CO turning around to him said, you might be quite good at this. Why didn't you try it at university? And that from that point in the early 2000s to winning a World Championship gold medal 4 years later in the senior GB team, that's extraordinary. I mean, I think that is, no previous talent known. And, I hope his PE teacher is listening, because I suspect he'll be remarkably proud.
We need to find him, that's for sure. Yes, it is absolutely remarkable, isn't it? That you can go from. It makes me think about what other talents out there and how they get discovered. It's not always, you don't sort of wake up like when you're age 5 or something and think, right, I'm going to be an Olympic rower. I mean, how does that happen? Amazing.
Well, I'm pretty certain I've got some world-class talents that haven't been discovered yet, but it may take my lifetime before anyone ever discovers those. So there you go. But I mean, in every aspect of that interview, you come across an individual whom I do know, who is committed, determined, resilient, intelligent, compassionate, and above all, humble. I mean, how many Olympic gold medalists, are as humble as he is? He's extraordinary. He's a fantastic ambassador for himself, for the Navy, for the nation, and actually for the world, really. There need to be more Pete Reeds in the world.
I will just check my address book of Olympic gold medalists to check. I have absolutely no idea how to answer that. I don't know. But yes, he's a lovely guy, I must admit. Well,
we've got Ben Ainsley down the street. Perhaps we should invite him on and say, look, we had Pete Reed. You're just another Olympic gold medalist. Would you like to come and have a chat? Perhaps we'll do that. Let's move on to resilience, because I think this was a thread that came through his interview and your surprisingly intelligent questions, if you don't mind me saying, through it time and time again, resilience. And it wasn't just the resilience that he talked about, that, in order to be the world's best 3 times over, in fact, that's just Olympics. He was a world champion many times as well. But in order to be the world's best for as long as he was, the resilience to take all the knocks that life gave him, to learn all the lessons of failure and, and perfect the perfect rowing stroke. I mean, that is extraordinary. Just that alone. And then in September 2019, something else happens that's extraordinary. And he gets a spinal stroke, which even some consultant doctors had never heard of, and turned his motorway of his spinal cord, his words, into an overgrown footpath. A great metaphor, by the way. But I mean, and the resilience that he's now showing with that sort of 16 months ago is again just mind-blowing in my hand.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's enough to stop most people in their tracks forever. I think, having achieved so much and thinking, and this is the reward I get, the kind of introspection that might come with a scenario like that. And I don't know if it's occurred to him. I'm sure he has had his moments where he's had to really think long and hard. But yeah, that must be a real challenge to get over. The going from what he's achieved to like, I've got to learn how to walk and other things.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the whole podcast was almost like a lesson in life, to be honest, about how to take life's knockdowns and come back stronger. And he kept on going back to this about actually nothing in life is easy that's worth having, and there is one message that perhaps all the listeners, should take away, which is actually we get strength from, our knocks and our failures if we have the resilience and commitment to get up and try again and never give up. I thought it was fantastic what he said.
It was, yes, a role model for everybody. I'm quite looking forward to having him back on the podcast as well to see how he gets on.
Well, I think the character he showed during your interview, and the character I've known him over the last 15 years or so, is that if anybody is going to learn to walk again and take off the roller skates on the overgrown footpath or bridle path and actually maybe even progress to a B road or an A road, that person will be Pete Reed. If anyone can do it, that he's the person that can show us how to do. What a brilliant example for all of us. And I think you then, sort of couched it in, what a year we've had in terms of COVID. And he then related it to that as well, saying actually we're all going through our own personal roller skating on overground footpaths in some way or another. And the aim is to, pick yourself up and keep on going and never giving up. What a great bit of advice for all of us.
Yeah, I think people are going through some really difficult times. And I think if people could take a little bit of inspiration, take 1% of that, or maybe not even that, and use it to maintain the motivation, the drive to sort of keep going forward, and knowing that all things being equal, we should find ourselves out of this pandemic at some point.
He also, you also got an exclusive on your podcast, which is he revealed the very exciting news that the RN, the medical board, and then the oversight board, or whatever it was called, had decided that despite the seriousness of his condition, they were going to extend him in service. And they very, very rarely do that for people who have injuries as serious as he's got. But the fact that they're willing to do it is testament to their belief that he can actually, get back on his feet and start walking. As he said, he won't, necessarily be running and jumping, but he will, he will walk. And the fact that the RN have put their faith behind him I'm really proud of the service actually to do something like that. I think that's brave and really, but just shows what a great supportive network it is as an organisation. So bravo, Zulu, Royal Navy.
Is there a role for head of morale? Is that such a thing?
Well, he's an ambassador for the Royal Navy and Royal Marines charities, as you discussed at the very end. He was that before he suffered his spinal stroke, and he continues to be that. I suspect he will be a talisman for morale in the Royal Navy, and the example that he demonstrates, not just how he conducts himself, but the fact that the way he's supported by the Navy in allowing him to continue in service is a really, really good demonstration of what a great organisation this is.
I would agree. And it also gives you the opportunity, it's certainly given me the opportunity to sort of, reflect back on my own situation, my own circumstances, and think, actually, if people are out there that can do stuff like that, then maybe the things that I was thinking in my head, or maybe our listeners' heads, aren't quite as big as we thought they were, or insurmountable.
I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, and in my head, Steve, you've always been an Olympic gold medalist. I'm just not sure what the discipline was, that's all.
I think that's for another podcast. You could have a gold medal for pathway metaphors in this episode, I think.
Yes, always good to have a metaphor thrown in here and there. So anyway, just to conclude this, just the journey he's been on from unremarkable schoolboy, unachieving anything in sport, through 3 Olympic gold medals, to now fighting his way back to learning to walk again. You just think of that journey is a remarkable individual, and what a pleasure to listen to him. Please make sure he does come back in a year's time, and I suspect the progress he's made in those 12 months will be itself extraordinary.
I'd agree. I think if our listeners are interested in finding out more, he's well worth following on Twitter. The video I referred to of him learning to walk in a pool. So if you're interested in that story and that journey, well worth a follow on Twitter.
Yes, and also you can follow him on the Royal Navy Royal Marines charity website as well, where this podcast will be amongst many places published. And he nodded his head to the support he's had from them since he had his stroke.
Absolutely. So thank you for that, Mike. I'm off to buy a rowing machine.
I don't think you'll be setting the fleet record this year.
Well, not that fleet.
You mean the one in your bathtub?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, and we'll see you for the next episode.
Thanks for listening. The Royal Navy and Royal Marines charity exists to support sailors, Marines and their families for life. If you or someone you know could do with some support, give them a call on 023 93 87 1568 or drop them an email on support@rnrmc.org.uk. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to hear more, please subscribe.